Video. I'm going to do a quick video on databases with an example. So databases are really just a collection of predicates that relate to each other. Here we have a database with two tables, so each table is considered a predicate, and then the interpretation of the predicate is basically what is inside the tables. Okay, so here we have a table and it's a cat table. It has the cat's ID, the name, the breed, and the owner's ID. And so we can see that, Kit Kat is in the first row. And then we have a cat named Dog, which is a Manx cat, Sal, who's a calico, Cat, who's a cat, and Daw, who's a munchkin. And then here we have a table of owners, and it has their owner ID, name, and phone number. And you can see how we have, when we have the owner ID 10, these match up. And so this is really saying that Rilo is the owner of Kit Kat. Okay, so we're going to do some examples of queries. So the first thing we want to do is we want to write a query that returns the names and IDs of the cats Rilo owns. So we know that we're going to have to use the cat predicate. And we know that the free variables, the things that we want to return, are the names and IDs. And so these free variables we're going to list at the beginning. So you can put any kind of variable that you wish. A lot of times we just use like n's, like n1 and n2. However, you might want to do something that's a little bit more informative. So I'm going to use n and I. And because this is two things, we need to put them as a tuple. Okay, so we're going to return the sets of the tuples of names and IDs such that. And then we need to finish the rest of our query. So we were discussing cat. We now know that ID is a free variable, so we can put in I, because that's the first column in our cat table. The next one is the name, and that's also a free variable. And then now we have breed and owner ID. So we're going to want to quantify these, and we're going to want to quantify them with an existential quantifier. Now, why would we want to use an existential quantifier? Consider we used for all instead. What that's saying is we want, for all x, this is satisfied. So if x here was the breed, then we would want the names and IDs that work for every breed, which we're not going to get that to happen, right? Kit Kat and ID 00 is a ginger. She's not also a Manx and a calico and a cat and a munchkin. So it makes sense to be doing it with an existential quantifier. So this X is going to refer to the breed, and the Y is going to refer to the owner ID. And we look here and we have, not only do we want the names and IDs of the cats, we want them to be specifically cats Rilo owns. So that means we're going to have to use the owner predicate as well. And the owner is going to take in the owner ID. And remember how I said these IDs match? So that's going to be this Y right here. It also takes in the name. And we know that our name is going to be Rilo. It is fine if you do not put in the little quotations. That is fine. I'm just doing it in the quotations because that's what it would look like for databases. And then the last thing is the phone number. So again, we don't have that as a variable yet, and we don't want it to work for every phone number. We just want it to be some phone number. We want to return something inside this row that has the same owner ID as the cat and the name Rilo and some phone number. So the phone number is going to be, say, Z, and we're going to quantify the Z right here. Now we want this Y specifically, but also the X. We want the Y to go and have the scope until the end of this statement here, or question. And what we want is to join these two things with a connective. And so here, because we do want it to be a cat that Rilo owns, we want there to be this and connective. And then we can close this off with the set. So we now have a query that returns the names and IDs of cats that are owned by Rilo. And when we return this query, this is how it would go. We would look for, the cats in here. So the first cat we would look at is Kit Kat. And then we say, okay, Kit Kat has the owner ID 10. Now, is there a phone number in here where there is an owner ID 10 and Rilo? Yes, there is, right here. So this is your phone number, and then we have the same owner ID, and then Rilo is the name. So this is going to return the set of Kit Kat, Kit Kat with the cat ID of 00. And you can note that while the table has the ID come first, followed by the name, right here our query has it so the name is returned first, followed by the ID. Then we would go through the next one, and here we'd see, okay, there's an owner ID 10. Is there an owner ID over here that matches? Yes. And so it's also going to return dog Manx, dog and 001, 01. And then we're going to look here. It has the owner ID of 21. Now, is there something in here? Is there a phone number in here such that we have 21 Rilo and that phone number? Well, no, the only thing with 21 is this here, but Maria is definitely not the string Rilo. Then we would look here. We have 27. We look over here. Is there a 27 Rilo and some phone number? No. And similarly for the Munchkin. Okay, so that's the first example. The second example is we're going to return the names of those who do not currently own a cat. So again, the free variable is going to be a name. And we're looking at the owners, those who are listed in the database as owners, but they don't currently own a cat. Maybe this is more than just a cat database. Maybe there also is tables for dogs and hamsters and so forth. We don't know. But we do know that we're going to want owner. We don't want the owner ID, so that's going to be a quantified variable. We do want the name. That was our free variable. We don't want the phone number. So, oops, let's do Y. So that's going to be quantified. So we want this owner here in the first name. And we want them to not own a cat. So that means that their ID does not appear anywhere in here. So there does not exist. And how many things do we need to quantify? Well, we need the cat ID, the name, and the breed. So that's 3 more things. So we'll call that Z1, Z2, and Z3. So there does not exist these 3 variables such that Z1 is a cat ID, Z2 is a name, Z3 is the breed with the owner ID X. So this is saying we're going to return, so we're going to look at the owners. So we got owner here, and we're going to look at the owner ID to see if there doesn't exist something in here that has that owner ID. So we look at 10 and we notice, hey look, this satisfies this predicate here. Oh, I forgot to put the name. This is owner. Or sorry, this is cat. So this does satisfy it. So we do not have this satisfying because the inner part is satisfied, this here. So then we look at tired. Tired has the owner ID of 13. So we look through this table to see if there doesn't exist a row where we have the owner ID 13. And so we look through and we notice, hey, look, owner ID 13 doesn't exist in here. So that's going to be one of the things that is returned, is the name tired. Then we look at Maria. Maria, the owner ID 21, we can see we find it right here. So she does have a cat. Then there's myself. We look through here. Yep, I do own a cat, so I'm ignored. And then person does own a cat as well. So this is all that's returned.